move. You are essentially shackled. You are essentially shackled to the debt that you have accumulated. And here's the thing, I want you to hear me clearly. It is the debt that we have accumulated. For most of us, nobody put this on us. We did it to ourselves. We did it to ourselves. Every time we signed up for a credit card application, we did it to ourselves. Every time we took out a loan, we did it to ourselves. Every time we took out financing on a car, we did it to ourselves. Every time that we took out student loans for tuition, housing, and just to have a little money to kick it sometime, we did it to ourselves. And here's the thing. Most of us would say, well, you got to understand, I'm managing my debt. You got to understand, you got to have debt to get through in this world. And this is what I want you to understand. You believe that because the people that sell debt told you that. I remember my first credit card. Everybody remembers their first one. I got my first credit card through the bookstore at Morehouse College when I was an 18-year-old freshman in Atlanta, Georgia. I bought my books, and in the bottom of the bag was an application. And I saw it, and it was from Citibank. And I filled it out and sent it in, and all of a sudden, I had a credit card. I had to go pick up some more books as I found out about my other classes. I got an application from another bank. I believe it was Chase. Filled it out. I had 2 credit cards. In other words, I now had the ability to spend money that I did not have because the obligation, and this is how we think through it, I'll just pay a little bit every month. If I can just pay a little bit every month, I can kick it like I want to because I'm building credit. You know, we say I'm building credit. Now, here's what I want you to understand. Credit is simply proving to people that you will pay them back. That's all credit is. We walk around acting like having a credit score is like winning a silver medal or a gold medal in the Olympics. All it is proof that you owe people money. I want you to think about that for a second. Yeah, if you got a high credit score, it's proof that you owe people money and you pay it back on time. Not that you paid it off, just that you make your payments every month. And here's the thing, the higher your credit score, the more money folk are willing to give you. Now, this is what you have to think. I want you to understand, if you are in a hole, the first thing you have to do to get out of it is stop digging. And many of us try to improve our credit. Why? So we can borrow more money. And I want you to understand today, my goal is not only to get you out of debt, but to stop you from digging the hole. I want you to stop using credit cards. I want you to stop borrowing money because every dollar you borrow is a part of your future that you are selling off. Understand what debt is. A debt is an obligation owed by one party to another party, the creditor. Usually, this refers to assets granted by the creditor, but the term can also be used metaphorically to cover moral obligations. A debt is created when a creditor agrees to lend a sum of assets to a debtor. Debt is usually granted with expected repayment, and in modern society, in most cases, that repayment is of the original sum plus interest. This is what I want you to understand. The reason that people try to give you credit cards, the reason that when you're in a store, they ask you, you know what, we'll give you another 10% off today if you'll sign up and use this card, is because they know that once they've got you, they've got you. And I want you to understand what I'm getting at here. When you understand that once they've got you, you begin to understand that you have put yourself in slavery. I said it and I stand by it. This is what the book of Proverbs tells us in Proverbs 22, chapter 7. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. What I want you to understand is every time you take out debt, you have put yourself in slavery to somebody else. Let me show you what I mean. Plenty of us have debt. And the amazing thing to me is some of the debt that we have. Plenty of us have department store cards, and then we have just little store cards, and then we have major credit cards. You can walk through a mall, back when we walked through malls, and you can go by every store, and each one of them will give you your own personal way to be in debt to them. I mean, you can walk by, you can get you a Gap credit card, then you can get yourself a Victoria's Secret credit card. Let me just jump in real quick right here on this. Ladies, this is one of the things men don't understand. We don't understand a Victoria's Secret credit card because y'all go in, and I know you get the little frilly things, and if it's so much that you got to charge it, just get you some bloomers, because that's how men roll. We will hit the Walmart, grab us a 6-pack of Fruit of Balloons, and we are good to go. You ain't never had to charge those. You've got to get to the point where if you can't pay for it, you realize you don't need it. Remember when we started talking originally about your money mindset and we talked about wants versus needs? The reason I teach on that early is because once you figure out the difference between wants and needs, you can become content with what you have and not drive yourself further into debt. Let me press my case a little bit further. I want you all to understand who you work for. Now, some of y'all like, man, I got a great job. I work for the government. I'm a GS5, step 7. I'm a GS12. Some of you work for the school system. You work for the county. You work in private industry. You work for a bank. You work for a think tank. You work wherever you work. That's not who you work for. That's who pays your salary. Let me show you who you work for. You work for Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase, Sears, Nordstrom's. This is who you actually work for. Now, let me explain to you what I mean by that. The reason you need your job is because once a month, you got to send money to each of the people that you owe. So when you get your check, it's already spoken for. You should be working for you, but you're not working for you. You're working to pay them back. And this is what I want you to understand. If off of your labor, somebody else gets the money, that makes you a slave. And if I want to keep it all the way real, let me put it to you this way. There's a whole set of folk who put people out there, give them a bunch of nice clothes to walk around in, and send them out to make money, and then bring that money back to them. I'm not going to use the words. Y'all figure it out on the way home. But that's who you are when you're in debt. You have to get to the point. Oh man, my stream done went down. You have got to get to the point where you realize that you work for someone else when you're in debt. When you're in debt, every dollar you make is spoken for by who you owe money to. And here's the thing. You don't work for yourself anymore. You don't work for your family anymore. You work to pay them. And that's why you're stressed. That's why you can't stand your job. That's why you're trying to hit the lottery. That's why you want to quit, because you realize that every month they get the money and you sit there going, where did it all go? But I want to tell you today, if you can get to the point where you can extricate yourself from debt, where you can pull yourself out of it, watch this, your life gets easier because now you work for you. Let me put it to you this way. Think about your month of bills. If you didn't have any debt, all you had to pay was your cable, your car insurance, and your utilities. How much money would you have? What would you be able to do? How would you be able to live? How generous would you be able to be? How much would you be able to invest? How much would you be able to save? Would tithing be a problem anymore? If you got rid of all the debt, if you had paid off all of your credit cards, so you ain't got to pay that bill no more. Paid off your car, you ain't got to pay that bill no more. Paid off your mortgage, you ain't got to pay that bill no more. Everything that you owe debt on, you now have the money to yourself. Guess what? You just got a raise. And here's the thing. You can quit your job and go find one that you like better when you ain't got to be out making they money for them. But many of us, we want to get a raise. We want to get a high-powered job, a high-paying job. Watch this. Not because we're poor, but because we're broke. We owe them. So we work, we bust our humps, we show up every day. We're terrified of furloughs. We're terrified of getting laid off. We're terrified of anything going wrong because we need to pay the slave owner. And I'm saying it as hard as I can because I want you to feel bad about it for a minute. But I'm your Harriet Tubman. I'm here to show you how to escape. We're going to follow the North Star tonight, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get up out of here and we're going to tell Massa bye-bye tonight. Here's what you have to understand. If you get out of debt, you get freedom. If you get out of debt, you get to tell MasterCard, Visa, and everybody else, you get to tell MasterCard, bye-bye, Master. You get to tell Visa, no, I got a Visa because I'm going on a trip. You get to tell Discover somebody else to bother because I's free now. And what you've got to understand is that when you get to that point, there's a level of freedom, there's a level of anxiety that goes away, and there's a level of mental health that you regain because you're free. I want you to understand how it works. The Bible tells us very simply that the borrower is slave to the lender. Every time you borrow money, you have basically given somebody else a part of your check before you get your check. You have basically told somebody for the next X amount of time, I work for you. Part of my check belongs to you. I got to go make it because I got to show up with it. And this is what I tell you. They will tell you, you better have my money. How you know they'll tell you better have my money? How many of y'all have said, don't answer that phone? How many of y'all have looked at the caller ID and been like, I know that number? Why? Because they call you, hey, Miss Jones, this is Sam from Credit Associations. You seem to be a little bit behind and we were wondering when you were going to be able to make a payment. And now you're stressed out because they tell you, you better have my money. Now, no, they don't show up in a pink Cadillac ready to smack you. I'm going to leave that smack thing alone. It's tempting, but I'm going to leave it alone. But they doing the same thing. Get out there and get my money. But here's the thing I told you. You've got to get to the point where you have psychologically gotten yourself to the place of contentment where you are no longer worried about paying other folk because you don't owe other folk. Debt is never a blessing. I want you to get that out of your head because I know plenty of folk, and I've done it myself. We were in positions where we were like, I'm just praying that this goes through. I'm just praying that the application gets approved. I'm just praying that they'll give me this money. I hope this credit card goes through. I hope this loan goes through. I hope they approve this car loan. Woo, they did it yet. No, debt is never a blessing. God does not want you in debt. God wants you to be content with what you have and pay for it with what God has given you. But here's the problem. We want stuff before we can afford stuff. Now, let's walk through a couple things. I want you to understand there are some things that you are going to have some debt on. In the world that we live in, if you want to own a home, you are probably going to have some debt. Now, I want to give you the other side of that. Not owning a home does not mean you're going to hell. We have done a lot to talk about home ownership because home ownership gives you an asset, or at least that's what they tell us, and it appreciates. Now, here's the problem with that. Homes also depreciate. A house is a place to live, not an investment. This is what I want you to understand. When you buy a house, you got to pay your mortgage, you got to pay your insurance, you got to pay your property taxes. If something breaks, you got to call a plumber. If there's an electrical problem, you got to call your own electrician. If something goes wrong on a wall, you got to call your own contractor. These are all things you have to be able to pay for. If you live in an apartment, somebody else covers that. And let me show you the difference. If you have a mortgage that costs you, let's call it $2,000 a month, and you live in an apartment, and you can live in an apartment, and it costs you $1,200 a month. That leaves you $800. This is what I want you to understand. If you take this $800 and put it in a mutual fund, it will appreciate on average more than that house will. And you will still have a roof over your head for $800 a month less and money to invest. Now, I'm not saying don't buy I'm not saying don't buy a house. What I'm saying is make sure you can afford the house, and don't buy a house just so that other folk can say, "Oh, girl, you bought a house." Houses are not supposed to be impressive to people. They're supposed to be where you live when you can afford to buy one. Because if you took the excess money and invested it, you would get appreciation that would work at a higher level on average than home appreciation. But you've got to make sure you understand the math. Too many times we don't do the math, we just follow the societal norms, or we just follow what sounds good. And this is what I want you to know: everything that sounds good ain't good. Everything that seems like a good idea is not a good idea. Remember last week when we talked about budgets? We talked about budgets reflecting your values. Now, if your budget is littered with bills, my question becomes, what do you value? Do you value the bills? Do you value being showy? Do you value folk seeing that you've got this, that, or the other? This is what you have to understand. You want the freedom to do what you want to do with your money. And it only becomes your money when you stop owing other people. See, debt creates an illusion. Debt creates an illusion. Debt is a magic trick. This is what we think it is. We think debt lets us do more because now I've got access to money. I've got access to capital. I can do this, that, and the other. I can move some things around. I can get stuff early. Here's the problem. Debt doesn't let you do more. It limits what you can do, because once you're in debt, you can't do anything else with that money until you've paid it off. If you take out a car note for 60 months, that money is tied up in a debt. It doesn't give you freedom. It just gives you a bill. Here's the thing. We think debt lets us own more. Now, listen, there are some things that you may have to pay for with debt because you just can't buy them with cash. But understand this. If you buy a car and you have 60 payments and you make 57 of them, they will take that car from you, because that car is still owned by the bank until you have fulfilled your obligation. If you buy a house and you owe 360 payments, if you make 357 of them, it's still not your house. It doesn't let you own more, you own less, because you only own what you own outright. Everything else you own a part of. Here's the thing. We think that debt lets us access more. That's an illusion. Debt doesn't let you access more. You have access to less when you have debt because you have the responsibility for the debt that you have taken out. In other words, once that debt is taken out, it's there until it's paid off. The last illusion, we think debt gives us flexibility. Debt doesn't give you flexibility. Debt ties your hands. It ties your hands to what you've already spent. Because this is what I want you to understand. Every time you hear the word debt, I want you to hear another word in your mind. Debt equals risk. Every time you put yourself in debt, you put yourself at risk. Every time you put yourself in debt, you are risking your future, because until this is paid off, you are at risk if you run into any kind of a bump. Here's the thing. You can get laid off if you've got savings and no debt. But if you get laid off and you're carrying $200,000 worth of debt, you got a risk problem. You are risking that if anything goes wrong, these folk are coming for you. And you have to understand. That's why, like I said, there's some things you're going to have some debt on, because it's hard to buy a house. Especially, look, we in the DMV. Average house in the DMV is like $270,000, $300,000. You ain't necessarily sitting on that. You know, average man in America makes $48,000 a year. Average woman in America makes $42,000 a year. You ain't necessarily sitting on $280,000 in cash to buy a house. Here's the question. How much house do you need? Because remember, Debt equals risk. And here's what we do with debt sometimes. We try to see how much of it they will give us. But the more they give you, the more you're risking. Because how many of us, let's just be honest, I want to talk to the homeowners real quick, and I want to talk to the folk who are looking to buy a home. How many of you have 3 people living in a 5-bedroom house? Who living in these other rooms? These other rooms that you got to heat, that you got to cool, but there's only 3 of y'all. And if you married, this is the fun part. Watch this. There's 3 of y'all and 2 of you share a room. So now you got all types of extra space going on. You have to remember that money is not medicine and debt is not medicine. Debt is poison. And the problem that many of us have is that we have used debt to make ourselves feel better. We have used debt and put ourselves at risk. That's why I want you to get in this habit. And you all have been kind of trying to do it during your Lenten fast. I want you to understand cash or cash equivalents is better than credit. Here's the problem. When you spend cash, you feel it. This is what I mean by feel it. When you got to go in your wallet and pull out a couple 20s and hand them over, and they give you back a 5 and 2 ones, you feel that. By contrast, credit, swipe, pin, go. You don't feel it. You just, it went somewhere. But when it's cash, you have a visual reminder of what you've spent. And this is what I want you to understand. The visual reminder of cash will make you ask yourself some questions. The visual reminder of cash will make you say something that your mama used to tell you. We got food at home. The visual reminder of cash will make you say things like, I already got clothes. The visual reminder of cash will make you say things like, you know what? I'm on a diet. I'm going to leave these Reese's right here because even though it's buy 2, get 1 free, I don't need none of them. Cash will make you remember that it's real. Credit and credit cards allow you to live like it's a fantasy. Cash makes you spend less because you're watching what you do. Cash makes you think about what you're doing. Here's the other thing I want you to understand. Cash, when you spend it, gives you bargaining power. Because when you walk in and you tell them, look at here, I want to buy this sofa. Try it. Walk in, tell them you want to buy this sofa. And they're like, oh, it's $5.99. You're like, look, I give you $450. And they're like, no, it costs $5.99. Pull out $400 bills and a 50 and just say, I want to spend $450. See if they let you walk out the store. Cash changes people's minds because it's immediate. And here's the other thing. Cash gives you immediate ownership. You don't owe nobody. What you do is yours. I want you to understand some math. I know many of y'all don't like math. I'm going to show you a little bit of math. Now, this math is a little bit old because the Federal Reserve just raised interest rates. So the average interest rate is in this country, I think, is at about 19.54% on a credit card. But I'm doing this based on an old interest rate at 16.89%. Let me show you why you got to get your wants and your needs in order because debt will catch up with you. Remember when I told you that money isn't medicine? And you need to plan for what you're trying to do. Remember we talked about in budgeting. If you want to go to Jamaica next year, you need to start planning and putting that money away now. This is why. Because you pop up and say, I want to go to Jamaica. And I got the money on my credit card. So you spend $1,000. Roll out to Jamaica, have yourself a good old time. But you did it at 16.8% interest. This is what you have to understand. The monthly interest on that is 1.047 every month, which means that 1 month of interest on that $1,000 costs you $10.47. 1 month's interest. So on your first payment, if you pay the minimum due, the first payment will be, let me clear up a little bit of space here. Your first payment, if you pay the minimum due, will be 3% of the balance. So that means that your first payment, as you pay for this trip to Jamaica, will be $30.31. Now, what you need to understand is that when you give them that money, of this $30.31, $19.84 of it goes on the debt. And $10.47 of it is interest. This is how it works. That $1,000 paid off with minimum payments, $19.84 towards what you owe, $10 for the privilege of spending it, which means that to pay off that trip to Jamaica will take you 7.5 years. 7.5 years if you pay the minimum payment to pay off that trip to Jamaica. And that $1,000 trip will cost you $1,628. And 80 cents. $1,000 trip on your credit card, 7.5 years. You will pay, if it's a week-long trip, you will pay a year for every day that you were there. And you will eventually wind up paying them $628 for the privilege of using their money to go on your trip. This is how we wind up broke. This right here. When we are in debt, the interest eats up our money. I hope I've convinced you. Can you really afford this? 62% of this is what you pay them back over time. You got to get out of debt. And the first thing that you have to do to get out of debt is very simple. Stop. Stop using credit cards. Stop borrowing money unnecessarily. Learn to live with what you have. Be content with it. Look, if it ain't broke, you ain't got to replace it. You don't have to keep buying stuff. And you certainly don't have to buy anything that you have to charge. You have to stop. Because if you keep digging, the hole only gets deeper. You have to stop. Now, once you stop, we can start talking about how you get out. So I told you, I am on a crusade to get the body of Christ and believers out of debt. I want you to understand something. There is no place in the Bible where God ever said, go borrow money. Matter of fact, God tells you to owe no man anything. So what I want you to understand is that you've got to get to the point where you stop digging the hole and start climbing out. And I'm going to show you tonight how to climb out, starting with $5. Show you tonight how to climb out, starting with $5. $5 doesn't seem like a lot, but it is a start. Let me show you what $5 is. If you go to Starbucks and buy yourself a coffee, now I don't drink coffee, so one of them is small, one of them medium, one of them large, but they got fancy names for them. I'm sure one of them costs $5. Now, If you do that 5 days a week, when you go to work, that's $25 a week. Let me show you how you can get yourself out of debt. Look at what you spend. You're supposed to all be keeping spending journals right now. Pick one thing. It could be eating out for lunch. It could be your Starbucks coffee. Pick one thing and stop spending money on it. Now, this is what you're going to do with the money you spend. We're going to take this $25 that is the Starbucks habit that we're going to call it. I want to teach you how to roll your debt up. And this is what I mean by roll your debt up. This is how you do it. I want you to take all your bills and write them down. And this is how I want you to write them down. From the largest to the smallest. So for most people, your largest debt, I'm talking about your debt right now. Your largest debt for most folk is going to be your mortgage. Then it's probably going to be your cars. And if you got more than one, it's going to be more than one. Then it's going to be, you have credit cards. And most people have 3 or 4. So credit card 1, 2, credit card 3, credit card 4. Now, I want you to line these up by balance. Hear me. By how much you owe completely. So if you owe $300,000 on the house, that's number 1. If you owe $50,000 on the car, that's number 2. You owe $20,000 on this credit card, $15,000 on this credit card. This is some small card that you owe. We'll call it $1,000 on, and you got one last one like your Victoria's Secret card or something that you owe them about $300. This is what I want you to do. This is how you get yourself out of debt. You take all of these, and then the next thing you do is you look at what the minimum payment due is. Now, we're going to have to do a little math over here, and we're going to do this math. We're going to do it on this side. Say on that $300,000, you owe $2,500. That's too small. Let's work underneath. No, we're not going to work under. Y'all, I'm telling you, I need a bigger board. Once you line them up, next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the minimum payment. I'm making these numbers up, but you'll understand the point. Say you owe $2,500 a month on your mortgage, and you owe $600 a month on the car. Payment on this credit card is $125. Payment on this one is $75. Payment on this third one is $40, and the payment on this fourth one is $20 a month. This is what you're going to do. This is how you're going to climb your way out of debt. And I say climb because it's going to take time, but it will be worth it. Now, watch very carefully. You are going to take that $25 that we talked about from that one habit that you have taken care of, and you are going to pay the minimum on all of these, and you are going to add this $25 to this. So what you're going to do on your lowest debt is, instead of paying $20 a month or whatever that balance is, you're going to start paying $45 a month on that debt. Everybody with me? You're going to start paying $45 a month on that debt until it is crossed out. Then you are going to take that $45 and you are going to roll it up to this next one. So the minimum amount due on this one is $40 a month. Until you pay this one off, you are now going to pay $85 a month. See what we're doing here? You're rolling up. You took that $25 that you saved, you rolled it into this one to get you to $45. Now you're going to roll that $45 into the $40 to get you to $85. You hear me? All right. Now, once you've rolled that $45 into the $85, once you paid this one off, you're going to take that $85 and apply that 85 to this 75, which means that now you're not going to pay a minimum of $75 a month. You are going to start paying 5 and 5 is 10, carry the 1, 8 and 8, 16, $160 a month on this one. And what you will begin to see is as you roll these up, you're going to start banging these out one at a time, one after another. You're going to start banging each of them out, because what's going to happen is every time you roll up, remember, we talked about in a credit card, the principal payment versus the interest. When you roll up, you are applying it directly to the principal of the loan, and you don't have to pay what you've paid off. So this is what you have to understand. Now you've rolled up. Now you're paying $160 a month because you've rolled this 85 up. Now, once you knock this one out, this 160 rolls up again. So now you're paying on this big credit card $285 a month. You were paying $160. Now you're paying almost as much as the minimum payment. So you're taking the minimum payment and how that's split between principal and interest and adding a whole bunch of money on top of that. So now you're at $285 a month that you're paying until you cut this one out. Now, be clear, you haven't gotten a raise yet. You're just banging out debt. Now, this $285, watch this. Now you're going to attack the car. And instead of paying $600 a month, you have not gotten a raise. You've just gotten rid of some of the folk that own some of your money. So now you're going to be paying, instead of $600 on the car, you're going to be paying $885 a month on the car. And I'm going to tell you, you're going to knock that car out in less time than you could imagine. Now, this is what I want you to see. You ready? Once the car is paid off, change the oil, change the tires, don't buy another one. Once you got this $885, watch this. $2,500 plus $885. It's going to be 5, 8, 3, carry the 1. You are, instead of paying $2,500 a month on your mortgage, are going to pay $3,385 a month on your mortgage. Now, hear me. You're going to do that and pay off this mortgage because you will have added all of that into the mortgage payment because you've gotten rid of all this other debt. And at the end of the month, at the end of it, you get this mortgage paid off, and now that $3,385, I want to show you something. You've paid off your debt. All you got left is your utilities, your insurance, and now you got $3,385 a month that belongs to you. It's just yours because you've erased all of the debt. Now, let me make it real for you. Times 12. So 2 times 5 is 0. 2 times 8, that's 6. You carry the 1, that gives you a 7. Carry another 1, that's 6. It gives you another 7. 2 times 3 is 6. And then put this 0 here. $3,385. I'm about to blow your mind. 2, carry the 1, 6, carry the 1, 0, carry 1, 4. You have now, if you paid off your debt, given yourself a raise of $40,600, and I'm pretty sure that was a 2. $20. By simply taking $5 a day from your work week to get to that first $25, to knock out that first bill, once you've cleared out all the debt, this is your free money now. This all comes to you to spend however you want. You want to go on a trip? You got $40,000 more dollars a year to go. You want to invest? $40,000 more dollars a year. You want to save? $40,000 more dollars a year. You want to pass on generational wealth? $40,000 more dollars a year. You have not gotten a raise. You've just gotten out of debt. And now you can do whatever you want to because you got a $40,000 raise by not spending money and just getting yourself off the debt that you owe. You want a new car? Save for a year. Buy your Benz cash. Because I promise you, if you walk into the Mercedes dealership and you tell them, I got $40,000 in cash, you will leave with a Mercedes. And next year, you know what you get to do? You get another $40,000 because there's no note on this. And because your house is paid off, when you sell it, guess what? You don't have to split that money with the bank. You can sell that house, move yourself to Florida, and pocket the money. But you got to get yourself out of debt. This is why I'm so passionate about it. Because what could the kingdom of God do if folk had an extra $40,000? Could we feed the hungry? Could we clothe the naked? Could we give scholarships to put our kids through school? Heck, could you put your own kids through school? What could you do with an extra $40,620? But the only way to get there is to start and stay the course. Find yourself $25 and start knocking out your debt. And on the other side, you will have more money than you know what to do with. You will have more freedom than you know what to do with. You will be able to live how you want to live, do what you want to do, be where you want to be because you knocked out the debt. You can get the shackles off your ankle. You can buy your freedom back. You can tell them folk that's sending you out there to get their money where they can go and how to get there after you pay them off. My brothers and sisters, I told you I'm going to give you the North Star tonight. The North Star costs you $25. Maybe that's lunch. You bring it from home instead of buying it when you're out. Maybe it's coffee. You make it at home and take it with you instead of buying it while you're out. Find that $25 and start banging out your debt, and you'll get a raise without having to make a dime more money. That takes time. I want you to understand, this is not a get-rich-quick scheme. This is not a magic pill. Think about how long it took you to get in this debt. It's going to take you some time to get out. It's going to take you some discipline. But if you want to be free, this is what you have to do. This is what you have to do. It's the only way out. I'm Harriet Tubman, and I approve this message. Rem Lee?
Harriet, we want to thank Dr. Williams. Thank you so much. This is incredible how you were able to show us how to be able to do something. Oftentimes, we think it takes so much to be able to do something, but really, it takes a little bit and something that we already have in front of us, and just to be able to use what we have to get to where we want to go. And so thank you so much, man. This was incredible. Look, I have a question for you. And not just in the chats, but just some folks were asking, what is your encouragement for people who find themselves overwhelmed? And I know you've talked about it a bit, but just help folks. Sometimes looking at the big number can overwhelm them, even though what you're saying is you chip away at this a bit at a time. But talk a little bit about that and how not to get so overwhelmed that you don't start.
Okay. This is what I want to tell you. The reason I teach it this way, and a whole bunch of other folk teach it this way too. Um, this is a behavior issue and a psychological issue more than anything else. The way for you not to get overwhelmed, don't look at the big number. Don't look at how long it's going to take. This is what God told Moses when Moses said, "What am I supposed to do when I get to Pharaoh?" He said, "What's in your hand?"
Mhm.
He didn't tell him, "Well, those folk are depending on you." He didn't tell them, you got to do this so we can get to this land that I promised. He didn't say, "We're starting a nation, go on, get your stuff together." He said, "What's in your hand?" All you have to do, this is how you don't get overwhelmed. You make the decision for yourself that is important to me to be free. Once you make that decision for yourself, look at what's in your hand. Find yourself that $25 and focus not on the big number, but on that first bill. I'm going to tell you why. Because the sense of accomplishment you will have when they stop sending mail to your house asking for money will be overwhelming. When you pay off that first bill, even if it's just $300, when you've done this and proven to yourself that you can do it, you will feel amazing. And you will look at that next bill and say, "I'm coming for you." And when you take that one out, and this wasn't a fluke, I've done this twice, that bill above it, you're going to start looking at it like, your time is limited. You don't look at the big number, you look at the first step. And then you just have faith and the discipline to keep doing what you set out to do.
Dr. Williams, thank you so much. There's another question that is from a married person that
Mhm.
is asking for your counsel. Um, Asking for your counsel about being in a situation in which their spouse may not be as on board
Ah,
as they are. And how do they navigate that to get their spouse on board so that they're not saving and then the spouse is, kind of spending and it's kind of going against the whole process?
all right. Y'all remember last week we talked about budgets, and I told you that budgets have to be agreed on. I'm married, and this is what I can tell you. Y'all have got to be on the same page. Now, the reason you have to be on the same page is because if one of you is going in one direction, the other one is like, "I'm lighting fire to the plan never gets accomplished. Y'all have to come together on what your long term goals are and then work backwards from there. Now, here's the thing, it may take a minute because, listen, when you're dealing with grown folk, they have to buy into what you're trying to do. Y'all got to be on the same page. When the Bible talks about being equally yoked, that doesn't just go away when you walk down the aisle. We think about, "Oh, yeah, I want to be equally yoked and we good. We'll be fine forever." No, y'all got to be equally yoked as you move forward as well. So you and your spouse have got to sit down and talk to each other and say, "Listen, what are we trying to do here? Where are we trying to get to?" And then put together a plan that you all mutually agree upon. Now, here's the thing. If you know your spouse likes nice stuff, you got to put some nice stuff in the budget, but buy that nice stuff in cash. That means that something else has got to give. That means that something's got to go so that you can have the money to do that. And maybe you don't do it every week or don't do it every month. It becomes every other month or every so often. But you got to reward yourself a little bit along the way, because if you don't, this just gets painful. You've got to be able to just put together the stuff so that everybody is on the same page and everybody's needs are being met. But that only happens if you can sit down and have frank and honest conversations about this stuff. Oftentimes in marriages, the reason why it doesn't work out financially is because folk don't talk about the money. We just kind of sit there and go, "Oh, we'll figure it out," or, "Oh, it'll come together," or, "Oh, the Lord will make a way." No, y'all got to sit down and have grown-up conversations, because this is grown folks' business.
And so our last question is once you get to that big number, And
Mhm.
once you get debt free and you get to whatever that big number is, on your board it's $40,620.
Uh-huh.
Once you get to that big number, what is some advice you give on what to do with that big number so that it can grow year over year?
You have basically asked me to teach next week's lesson in the next 3 minutes.
Okay, so no,
Uh,
no, no. So so if you're saying that's next week lesson
Next
teaser
week, we're going to talk
next
about
week.
investing. Next
Okay.
week, I told y'all the foundation for this is a budget to get your house in order. Well, foundation, you got to get your mind right. Then you get your mind right, and then you put a foundation in, which is a budget to get your house in order. If you follow this and get yourself out of debt, you're going to have something that you may not have ever had before: money. And now the question becomes, what do I do with it? And the answer is kind of whatever you want to. There's not a cut and dried answer. Now, if your goal is to grow it, we're going to talk about that next week with investments. But maybe your goal is to grow some of it and to have a little fun. If I had an extra 40 grand a year, I promise you I'm going on vacation with some of it. So it's you got money now. What do you want to do with it? But next week, we're going to talk about investing. I'm going to walk you all through a whole bunch of stuff about investing. Investing is not nearly as complicated as folks think it is. Part of why people want it to seem complicated is because if I can make it seem complicated, you'll never do it. I'm going to show you some easy ways to put the money that you will have to work so that you can have generational wealth.
All right. Well, Dr. Williams, thank you so much. This has been incredible once again. And we're excited about just the responses we've been seeing in the chats and in the conversations. For those folks who had to jump from Facebook, that had challenges on the Facebook, and I'm not sure we've put in a tech ticket around that to see what the challenge was with the Facebook. We thank God it was going out on all the other platforms. We will be posting back to Facebook, but you can go to communityofhope.tv. It will be put up there in minutes, actually. And so it will be there in minutes, as well as we will make sure to re-air this at some point during the week on Facebook, so that it can be a blessing to you as well. You can be able to look at all of the presentations that Dr. Williams has shared at communityofhope.tv, communityofhope.tv. Go to Money Matters and you'll be able to see all of them right there, of Dr. Williams. So we're excited about that as well. And so I just want to have a closing word of prayer. Anything else you got to share, Dr. Williams, before we go?
No, it's just a blessing joining y'all every week. I look forward to seeing you all next week.
We're excited about it, folks. Don't forget this Sunday at the Skate Palace. We are back in stride again. That's right. We're back to in-person worship. Make sure to get registered. We will be social distancing. We will be wearing our masks, and we will be getting our praise on and our worship in all together to God's honor, to God's glory. Come on, let me pray for you as we move forward in this evening. God, in Jesus' name, we do thank you and we give you glory. We give you honor. We give you praise for all that you have done. We thank you, God, for this word that has helped us to have a plan for how to be able to take a little bit and to be able to use it, God, to make a huge difference in our lives. God, we thank you, and we do speak prosperity over your people. We speak, God, that you shall give them everything they need to get and become all that you've called them to be. We speak generation over generational prosperity, that we speak, God, leaving an inheritance to their children's children, to God's honor and to God's glory. It's in Jesus' name. Bless your people as we move into this evening and into this tomorrow. In Jesus' name, amen and amen. God bless everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful week. God bless you. We'll see you Sunday.